So, did you ever want to create a basic annotation system for one of your Godot games? Something that allows your players to draw simple shapes directly on top of the game visuals, for example, to highlight some stuff or to organize their thoughts? I've actually worked on this kind of tool for Locktail, the puzzle game about ciphers I'm currently developing, and so far my players have really enjoyed being able to write down their thoughts easily inside the game with this tool that is like an instantly accessible notepad. Oh, and by the way, remember that if you want to help support the project by adding it to your wishlist, or you want to try out the free demo, you can have a look at the Steam page over here. But anyway, creating this kind of annotation mechanic is actually not that hard to do in Godot. The whole thing relies on storing quite basic data, catching the right inputs, and using Godot's built-in 2D drawing tools, which I discussed in this previous tutorial, if you're not too familiar with those, to finally show the result on screen. So today let's have a look at how we can take an arbitrary 2D scene like this one, and add in tools to draw lines, circles or rectangles, plus an eraser, and 3 different colors to pick from. Okay, now first of all, let's set up a node to put our annotation script logic on. Here you see I went for a default control node that takes up the whole screen, and so I've put my annotations script on it. This is all we need at this point in the editor. The script itself looks like this. At the very top we've got an enum to define all our different annotation tools. Right now there's only the line tool, but we'll gradually add more throughout the tutorial. Then we've got the stroke width parameter, which are exported in the node inspector for good measure, but so this is what will define the thickness of our lines and of the contour of our circles and rectangles. Next up, we've got the drawing boolean flag that will indicate whether we're currently pressing down on the left mouse button, meaning whether we should record the movements to draw them as annotations or not. The current tool variable stores what tool we've currently got selected, and the current element array will store all the data that is required to represent our current in-progress annotation element. As we'll see very soon, this info will be slightly different depending on the kind of annotation we're making, so on the tool we've got active, line, circle or rectangle, but for all 3 tools the necessary data can be stored as an array, so we'll just reuse this variable in every case. Finally, the data dictionary is where we'll store the already drawn annotation elements and the one in progress. In other words, this will contain all the info for all the elements on screen, which will make it super easy to draw everything afterwards using Godot's built-in drawing tools. As a side note, this is also pretty neat because it means that just by saving or reloading this dictionary from the disk, we can effectively save and reload all of our annotations between sessions if we want. Again, this is what I've done in Locktail, so you'll actually keep your annotations between sessions if you reload the same puzzle. Okay, so now that we've looked at our variables, let's quickly go through our current logic. Right now, this simple script is only capable of drawing line annotations. To do that, the idea is the following. First off, in the ready function, we make sure to pick our line tool as the startup tool. All this pickTool function does for now is assign our current tool variable to the proper value from our tool enum. Then we've got our input hook that will handle all the user events. We'll dive into it in a second, this is where the real magic will happen, but just before we go into it, though, you see that we end with the built-in draw hook, so this is where we can use Godot's built-in drawing tools, and this is where we'll reread from all stored annotation data to actually show our elements on screen. Here we iterate through all the lines we recorded, and for each one we draw a 2D line on screen that goes from this start position to this end position, is drawn in red, and uses the given stroke thickness. Okay, great, so what exactly happens in this mysterious input method? Well, we basically have 2 important types of events to check for. If we press or release our left mouse button, then we want to update our drawing state to enable or disable annotation recording, and if we're starting to draw, meaning drawing is true, we also want to properly initialize our current element variable. Now, again, what we put in this array variable depends on the type of annotation we're creating, so on the tool that we've got active. At this point, we've only got lines for which we need to record a start position and an end position, as we saw before in the draw function. So those are the 2 elements we need to be able to actually draw a line later on. So we can initialize our current element variable to an array with the current mouse position as both the start and end position, and then we'll simply need to update this second item as we move our mouse to get a reactive annotation system. And this line of code ensures that our new element is added to the list of lines in our data so that our system knows to draw it. So more precisely, for the update part, we're going to do the update in the second half of the input hook, where we check for mouse movements. So if we've got a mouse motion event, and we're currently drawing, i.e. the left mouse button is still pressed, we'll again check which tool we're using to properly update our current element array. For lines, like we said, we'll simply check that the array was prepared as expected, and then we'll set its second element, so the one at index 1, to the new mouse position. This will basically have the line have an anchored start position, and an end position that just follows our mouse. Finally, we'll call QRedraw to tell Godot to redraw everything by calling the draw method again. And well, that's it. If we try this out, you see that we can already point our mouse anywhere on screen, press the left mouse button to start drawing a new line, move our mouse to have this line follow our cursor, and finally release the mouse button to end our annotation and freeze it in our data record. Then we can start a new annotation line, move it around and record it, and so on, clicking anywhere we want on screen to trace red lines on top of our 2D scene. Alright, so this is quite cool. Now let's see how to add a second tool to our annotation system, the circles. For that, the first step is straightforward. Back in our script, we'll add a new value to our tool enum, add a new array of circles to our data dictionary, and update our draw function so that it also iterates through our circles and draws them. This time, you notice that we use the draw circle built-in, obviously, which requires the center point of the circle, then the radius, then the color, then this boolean tells Godot that it will not be filled, and finally this sets the stroke width. The rest of the logic is once again in the input hook. Basically, in both our tool match checks, we'll add the new circle case, and this time, for the initialization, we'll use our current mouse position for the center and a radius of 0. And for the update, we'll recompute the radius of the circle by taking the distance between the center of the circle, that we recorded and placed as the first element in the array, and our current updated mouse position. Before, of course, again calling QRedraw. This will allow us to draw circles around a given point, scaling their radius up and down simply by dragging our mouse closer or further away from the initial click point. Although this does mean that we now need to be able to switch between our two tools. We've got lines and circles, and we need to be able to pick the one we want to draw. So for that, let's jump back to the editor for a second and create a basic UI like this one. Here you see I've got a couple of nested containers. This is the usual way to do responsive UI in Godot. If you want to learn more about this, you can check out this video I made on that topic. But so anyway, finally at the end of this hierarchy, I've got two buttons for our line and circle tools. You can of course style those as you want, so they fit your project. The only thing that we need to do logic-wise is to connect the pressed signal of both buttons to the pick tool callback function we defined earlier in our annotation script. But of course, we need to bind the proper tool name for each button. So the first button will use line and the second will use circle as input parameter. This is done by linking a new callback to the press signal, so you can double-click on it to open up the connection pop-up, pick the pick tool function from our annotation node script, and bind a string argument on it with the right value. Note that if you want to learn more about signal callbacks and argument binding, you can again have a look at another video I made specifically on that topic. But okay, so now if we retry our demo, you see that we start with the line tool active by default, like before, but we can click on our circle tool button to enable it, and then we can click and drag the mouse to trace our new shapes. Now, with all this in mind, we can quite easily add our rectangle tool following the exact same process as the circle. We'll add the new rect value to our tool nm and the rex array in our data. We'll also update the draw function so it also iterates through this rex list, and we'll use drawRect to visualize each item. Here we need to pass the matching rect to D, which we can create by passing our first element as the top left corner and the difference between our elements as the rect size. Then this is the color, this is the not filled status, and this is the stroke width, like for the circles. So if we examine how we create our rects too, this basically means that for rectangles, the current element array needs to store the top left corner of the rect, and then the second element should be its opposite corner. So we'll do this in the input method, as usual. We'll add our new rect case to both parts, and so given what we've said, for rectangles it's actually exactly the same thing as for the lines. We needed to keep track of the start position at the moment of pressing down our mouse button, and then the updated mouse position while we're drawing, which will be our second rectangle corner. Next up, just go back to the editor, add a new button to the toolbar that you connect to the pick tool callback with a bound rect input string parameter, and you're good to go. If you start the game again, you'll notice that you can now pick the rectangle tool and start drawing rectangles on screen wherever you want, starting from any corner and giving them any kind of aspect ratio that you want. Then you can combine those with our previous tools to really start creating more complex annotations, linking stuff together, or more. That being said, at this point, you'll notice that we have no way of undoing or erasing what we did, which means that if we draw something we didn't want, or if we wish to remove a previous annotation, we're kinda stuck, and our screen might get covered in scribbles fast. So let's work on our fourth and last tool, the eraser. The first step is, as always, to add it to our tool nm. Then in our input method, we'll add the eraser case to both our click event and our mouse movement event, and in both instances, we want to call a new erase function that looks like this. The goal of this method is to remove any annotation elements we've recorded previously and that intersect with our current mouse position. Since we're calling erase while we're drawing with the eraser, it will also work if we press the left mouse button down and then move the cursor about. So basically, we want to filter our lines, circles and rex data lists to only keep the elements that we don't touch with our mouse while using the eraser. But the naive approach of just comparing the mouse position with the shape of the element is a bit lacking. Indeed, it would require the players to click or hover exactly the elements, which is quite annoying, because it's very restrictive. You'll always end up clicking and thinking you're gonna erase it, and actually you're just 2 pixels too far away, and so this is not an intuitive tool. Instead, we'll give our eraser a small radius, so we'll check for small zones around our shapes, something like that, so that there is a bit more leniency with our tool. To do that, you see that we've got to compute those specific shapes for each kind of annotation. So for lines, we want to check for the distance between our mouse pointer and this segment, and check that it's under our eraser size threshold. To compute the distance between a point and a segment, we can use this util function. This is just a bunch of maths, so I won't go into details here, but it will allow us to compute the proper distance for when we try to erase our lines. For circles, we'll check that the distance between the mouse pointer and the center of the circle is roughly equal to the circle's radius, so basically its difference with the true radius is less than the eraser size. And for rectangles, we'll check that we're somewhere along the edge of the shape, at maximum eraser size pixels away on either side. The last step is to add a new button in our toolbar that is connected to the pick tool callback with the eraser input parameter. And then if we try our demo again, we see that we can have a bunch of shapes and then use the eraser to remove any of them simply by drawing the mouse pointer near it. So we're starting to have a pretty well-featured annotation system, and to wrap up this tutorial, we'll just do a couple of things. So we'll do one quick invisible improvement. boost our eraser slightly, and then we'll take care of adding multiple colors to our annotation mechanic. Okay, now first for the improvement, it's about cleaning up our annotation data. Because right now it can happen that we click, create a new element, and instantly release our mouse, which basically adds a new invisible, essentially empty annotation to our data that won't even show on screen. So it's basically making our data heavier without being truly useful. To avoid this, let's make a new clean function in our script that filters out any empty element from our 3 lists. In short, it's just about checking that our lines don't start and end in the same point, or that our circles don't have a null radius, or that our rex corners aren't in the same place. Though, of course, this doesn't concern the current element that we're working on, even if it's currently empty, because it's not finalized yet, so it might become not empty in just a little while. So okay, we've got this new clean function, and now we can simply call it in our draw method to ensure that our data is well maintained. The second thing I want to do is improve our eraser. Right now, if we look back at what our eraser system looks like, we notice it's a bit hard to know if we're actually erasing anything, because the eraser zone isn't visible, and we don't have any indication that we're actually in eraser mode. To solve that, we can add a new texture rect element to our annotation hierarchy in the editor that shows a simple zone sprite like this, and then back in our script, all we have to do is show or hide this element when we change tool, depending on whether or not we selected the eraser. And in the input method, if we're using the eraser and moving our mouse, we'll update the position of the sprite to match the position of the cursor. Note that here I also added an optional offset that can be set in the inspector to adjust the eraser visual to the end of the cursor in case you're using a custom mouse pointer like I'm doing here. And now you see that when we use the eraser, we have a clear indication, thanks to the visual, and this sprite properly follows our mouse as expected. Okay, so to finish this, let's work on having multiple annotation colors, instead of just tracing everything in red, like we've been doing up till now. Let's start by updating our logic, and so we'll add a new current color variable to store the color we've clicked last, and that will be used for upcoming elements, and we'll also have a pick color callback function to set it easily. We can set the default color to red, and then in our editor, if we add new colored buttons to our toolbar, we can link their pressed signals to this new pick color method and pass in the proper color input parameter as a bound argument. Then in our script, we just need to do 2 small modifications. First, in the input method, when we start to draw and initialize our annotation current element variable, we'll add the current color as a third item in the array. This is the same no matter which tool we're using, because all the tools need to have this info to draw it properly afterwards. Then finally, in the draw function, we'll replace our hard-defined red colors with this third element of the array instead. And there we go. If we retry our demo, you see that we now have a pretty complete annotation system that allows us to switch between 3 tracing tools, the lines, the circles, and the rects. Then we can use the eraser to remove any previous annotation that we don't want anymore, and we can click on the color buttons to change our current color and trace the future element in this new tint. All this makes for quite a nice mechanic that could be used in a variety of games to let your players spot stuff or highlight elements on screen in a quick and easy manner. Or they could even write down their thoughts like I did for Locktail to help my players solve the puzzles. Although in Locktail, there's also a freehand drawing tool that allows you to trace any shape you want with the pencil. So tell me, would you like me to make a follow-up tutorial on how to improve our annotation system further and add this kind of tool to it? In any case, I really hope you liked this tutorial. Be sure to react in the comments and subscribe to the channel to get more videos. And of course, a huge thank you to my Patreon members for their support and to you for watching. And as always, take care.